Welcome back to another episode of Perligo Ponders, in which I respond to your comments, questions, and theories about my own comments, questions, and theories relating to the lore and music of 21 Pilots. We have a number of different comments to get through as we make our way through October and after the release of Breach and everything that entailed as well. Our first comment, then, comes from Doug W. Benson, who writes, Perligo ponders, when Clancy is taken outside of the city in Heavy Dirty Soul, he's outside the city. How then, in city walls, does Clancy say in a city with no entrance there is no retreat? Seems that he was outside the city walls in Trench. Seems either there is an escape or the escape was an illusion. I'm stuck on the ending. It just leaves more unanswered questions. What do you think? So yes, I do agree that the ending of the story did leave us with more unanswered questions than questions answered. In terms of this one, it's an interesting line. I think the way I've always taken this, and you can let me know if you disagree and push back and provide different reasoning for this line, because the way I'm seeing it is more in a metaphorical sense. I mean, Trench in the world that he's built and that they've built throughout the story, in a lot of ways, is an allegory or a metaphor or whatever, a representation, a fictional, fantastical representation of struggles with mental health, right? We all know this. But in many ways, I've always seen the city of DEMA specifically, and the ending of the story further solidified this in my mind. The city of DEMA specifically as kind of a representation of Tyler's skull. Because of that, the idea of it being a city with no entrance or no exit, there's no retreat, this idea that it's a circular, unbroken circle. He's surrounded, right? He's trapped inside his head and his mind. And this idea that there is no retreat, there is no actual escape from his own mind. And so because of that, the only way to actually win is not to run away, but to overcome. And that's why you have to keep trying over and over again. That's why you always keep trying, right? That's the whole point of the ending. But it is true that a lot of what we see kind of at the end of the story, both in letters and songs, do relate to the geographical landscape of Trench and DEMA in a more literal way than what I just described. And in that sense, it is true that we see that DEMA has an entrance because Clancy enters DEMA in Paladin Strait. He enters through a breach in the walls and then finds his way into a tunnel and climbs out in the middle of the city, right? There is a breach location referenced time and again throughout the letters. The Torchbearer and the Banditos make their way in and out of the city, but it doesn't have an official entrance. And I think, in a sense, there's this idea that, and we kind of see this playing out throughout the music video of City Walls, that even when Clancy escapes the city of DEMA and makes it out onto the road, makes it to the Bandito camp, he hasn't fully escaped because he still can't fully run from his mind. He can hide from it. He can hide away in different corners, but he can't fully escape. And that keeps being revealed to him time and again. That's the whole idea of the cycle. Like, he keeps, the farther he runs away, the closer he eventually comes back. It's the idea of the road, Clancy Way, that we were looking at during the countdown to Breach, and how that road itself is a circle, is a loop that just brings you back into Andrew's drive. So even as you start you can get farther and farther away, but eventually you just start coming back again. So that's kind of my interpretation. Is that even as you escape the literal physical city of DEMA, you can never, truly escape by just running away. You have to actually overcome. And that's why he goes back at the start of Clancy, in the Clancy era. He's done running and he's gone back and is going to actually try to overthrow. And obviously it doesn't work in the version that we see played out clearly, but I do, as I mentioned, I think in my video on Drag Path, I think we do see the ending, and we do see a successful, victorious ending to the story revealed in the music video for Paladin Strait. Just looking at another future version of Clancy. All right, moving on to the next comment. This comes from Dangerous D Gaming, who hasn't had a comment featured for a while, but had a couple a while back. Perligo ponders, what if Clancy has escaped from Keons' district so many times, Nico just said, all right, that's enough, and took matter into his own hands, and that's why we have a discrepancy. In reference to a video that I made talking about why there's a discrepancy between Keons recapturing Clancy and bringing him back and Nico. I don't dislike this idea. I mean, it's kind of funny, right? I think the main issue with it is that we see Nico presumably it's Nico, but definitely not Keons, recapturing Clancy in the events of Jumpsuit as outlined in one of the first letters from Clancy. Again, I've made, I think, maybe 2 or 3 videos at this point talking about Jumpsuit and the Jumpsuit letters and all of that and how that all fits together, because it's still very hard to actually pin down as this is exactly what's going on. But we do see depictions of Nico tracking down Clancy very early on in the story, as well as Keons. I think it's a kind of fun idea that, Keons kept trying to bring Clancy back and Clancy kept escaping, and then Nico was just like, okay, you can stop. It's clearly not working. Or maybe even started to grow suspicious of Keons. And then, started tracking down Clancy himself. Jen asks a very important question here. Did we ever see Keons recapture Clancy? I think we didn't. I don't think we ever saw Keons and Clancy actually interact on the screen. We saw Clancy seize Keons' corpse, but he was dead at that point, so it doesn't really count. We only see this in the letters. We only see Clancy in relationship to Keons in the letters from the journal. But in terms of the Clancy that we see and we follow in the visual side of things, in the videos, no, we don't. We only see him interacting with Nico. And I guess 2 of the bishops on the live stream as well. So that's an interesting point. That's, again, there's this whole aspect of multiple different Clancys existing, and there's kind of a narrative that we follow through the letters that's different to the narrative that we follow through the videos. And for a while, we thought that they were supposed to be one-to-one. But now that we've seen the ending, and I think that reinforces the idea of a sort of time loop going on here with Clancy repeating it time and again, and becoming Nico, and then the new Clancy shows up, right? See that hinted at by Josh at the end. One way of looking at this is that the letters in Clancy's journal are from one attempt, and the video that we see is from another attempt. And so we're actually shown 2 different attempts throughout the story. We are told the story of 2 different attempts at escaping, if not more, but at least 2. This comment comes from Lucas, right? I don't know if anyone will really see this, but on the day of release of City Walls, I saw a comment that stuck with me, but nobody seems to be talking about. At 7:46 in the City Walls video, in the lower left on top of those buildings, a figure can be seen walking up on the rooftop. I'm not nearly smart enough to theorize about anything relating to it, but I do wonder what that's all about. So I was very excited when I saw this. So I went and I pulled up the music video for City Walls. So at 7 minutes and 46 seconds in City Walls, there's like the shape kind of moving across the rooftops of one of the buildings. And it's right at the end of the video as, before the end credits start playing, as Josh and the other bandito, presumably Elliot, start walking away. Unfortunately, it's not a figure. It would be really cool if it was, but it's sort of as that image, the way the camera is moving with those images of the tower and the other towers around it and the buildings to the side, as the camera starts panning towards it, the perspective is shifting around it. And so a spire from like a telephone pole is poking up over one of the buildings. As it moves across, it looks like someone's walking across the rooftop, but it's just a telephone pole moving across the frame. That's all that is, unfortunately. But it is an interesting, it's an interesting comment. And it made me take a second look. At City Walls to see what that was about. It piqued my interest, but unfortunately there isn't actually much there. Next up, we have a comment from Slurgenhelmer. I'm sure I said that perfectly. Perligo ponders, what albums' music videos make the most questions pop up? Personally, I think Skilled and Icy, mainly Shy Away, and Choker. This sounds like a bit of a cop-out answer, but I'm inclined to agree with you. Both Shy Away and Choker have a lot of different things going on in them that never really get answered. Now, there are other music videos like that. I kind of see Snapback in a similar fashion, right? There's this light at the end of that music video that never made sense to me. Yeah, I'm trying to think what other music videos raise the most questions for me. I mean, Shy Away in particular, there's so many different things going on in that music video that don't seem to be actually lore related, but also could be. We obviously Trash the Dragon for the first time there, and then we see him like in an empty parking lot going to a payphone. And things like that. Like, where is he? Is that supposed to be in DEMA? It doesn't look like any other part of DEMA that we see later. Choker could be a dream. That's true. Only in my imagination. That is definitely a way of looking at it. A sort of a way of starting to plant the seed in Clancy's mind that he shouldn't trust Josh as well. Mark's also said that music video is not lore related as well. So yeah, I think right off the bat, I'm inclined to agree. Shy Away and Choker are some of the most questionable in terms of what's going on. I certainly had a lot of questions about Vignette until we saw the ending of that one. And I think Routines of the Night raises some interesting questions as well. There's a lot of interesting Easter eggs in that one, but I don't know if the most is quite accurate. Fairly local. In some ways, that music video is very straightforward, but it also could have a lot of potentially interesting context around it. I was secretly hoping that Fairly Local was going to be one of the music videos they recreated for City Walls. It makes sense that they didn't, right? It makes sense the ones that they chose. That one would have been a cool one to kind of incorporate and bring into the story. And certainly, yeah, within particular context, that music video could be very interesting and have a lot of questions raised. But next up, we have a comment from Abby Weiss. Would you ever do a Perligo Ponders for JD lore? It got really good. Edit for Perligo Ponders. Do you think there is a Tower of Babel aspect to the DEMA lore? Also, do you think that maybe the finality of the lore is that the cycle won't ever break? First of all, the first question, would you ever do a Perligo Ponders for JD lore? A short answer, yes, absolutely. But the long answer is, I mean, that would have to be user-generated, fan-generated, whatever the right term is. Just like all of these episodes of Perligo Ponders, they're just based off of fan-submitted comments that I'm responding to. So if there are enough questions related to JD's lore, I will happily do an episode dedicated to that. I think there is a lot to discuss there. But I'm not going to artificially create one of those, if that makes sense. I'm sure I will at some point, is the short answer. That question out of the way, let's get into this next interesting question. Do you think there's a Tower of Babel or Babel aspect to the DEMA lore? I think in some ways yes, in some ways no. In terms of the Tower of Babel, I'm just going to go with that pronunciation. Certainly in the sort of kind of bare bones meaning of that, no, there is no aspect of the story where everyone's speaking different languages and they build a tower and they start speaking different languages, right? The point of that story was that the builders of the tower wanted to create a tower that would lead, kind of through which they could climb to heaven and become gods in and of themselves, right? And so as a result, they were punished. They were cursed with having to speak different languages. They couldn't communicate with one another. The building went to ruins, right? They couldn't finish the construction. And so there is sort of a similar aspect of the motivations behind which that tower was built and what we see in DEMA. Because the city of DEMA, and this is described throughout some of the letters, the towers and the walls are built so high that the citizens can't see over and often barely get glimpses of the sunlight as well, right? That's something that Clancy notes after escaping DEMA and wandering through Trench is just being able to see so much more of the land around him instead of just these oppressive tall city walls that are looming over him. And really that's a testament to the bishops wanting to impose this idea that this DEMA is all there is, and this religion of vialism and this whole kind of self-containment is what you should be aspiring to. And that is godly. Right, that is the higher purpose, or the higher power towards which you should be looking, is these kind of man-made structures, and the religion of vialism and the bishops at the highest point up in their towers. So in that aspect, yes, I do think it does relate to the Tower of Babel. And I think there are some other connections you can make. Maybe you could make the argument that in some ways there is confusion that is brought upon everything because of that. And then also there's also the lyrics in Time to Say Goodbye. I'm standing on a tower trying my hardest to make it, but I've built this tower out of mortal bricks. It's breaking. And which wasn't necessarily written in relation to the Tower of Babel, but it is a very similar concept again. The idea of standing on a tower trying to make your way, to build your way to heaven in order, because you think you are godlike. That was our final comment, actually. So a bit of a shorter episode. That being said, thank you for watching another installment of Perligo Ponders. As always, if you'd like your own comments or questions to be featured in the next episode, then comment something on any of the videos. Tag it as Perligo Ponders if you would like, but I don't just pull from comments with that tag. And yeah.